Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Whenever the Jaguars polished off the comeback, the first thing I tweeted was, so Sean Payton of the Chargers, right? And I think everyone else assumed the exact same, that Sean Payton would end up that the Chargers would fire Staley after that horrible collapse, and ultimately, would hire Sean Payton. Now, it appears as though, however, that may not be the case. So Adam Schefter on Sunday said, quote, "It's hard to see this franchise with its history being as aggressive as it would need to be to get Sean Payton. As much as he might be able to help that franchise, I don't know how realistic that is." And Jim Trotter, who's covered the Chargers for a long time, put together a really nice Twitter thread sort of explaining why he thinks they will not go after Sean Payton. So he set the ground rules essentially saying that he's just giving you his opinion. And again, Jim Trotter, verified Twitter account, NFL.com, has covered the Chargers for a lot of years. He wrote, "Cutting to the chase, I do not believe the Chargers will fire Brandon Staley. However, I do believe there will be changes to the staff." He writes, "I believe Sean Payton has never been a serious consideration because the team has never given serious consideration to firing Staley. And even if they were to make a change, there are too many factors working against Payton walking their sideline. The factors include," he writes, "draft picks. The Chargers love draft capital. They've exercised a first-round pick in each of the last 23 drafts and not likely to give up multiple picks, including a one, for Payton. Contract," he writes. "Payton figures to be one of the league's higher-paid coaches when he joins the team, and the Chargers simply don't spend on coaches in that way. Their last three hires have all been first-time head coaches who don't command large salaries. However," he writes, "people who call them cheap are ill-informed. I was a beat writer when they pursued Bill Parcells and Jimmy Johnson. The talks never got to money, nor would money have been an issue. Parcells and Johnson were simply content with their lives on the East Coast and out of football." He goes on, "One more thought about the money issue. I've seen them pay top dollar for players. Sayal, LT, Weddle, Rivers, Bosa, James, Jackson. The negotiations may have been hard, but the players ultimately got paid, sometimes setting the bar at their positions." And a couple of more, he writes, "Ownership also believes in checks and balances. Dean Spanos is allergic to giving full authority to one person. Payton had significant influence in New Orleans, likely will want it at his next stop. Lastly, and I know many of you don't want to hear it, the leadership likes a lot of things about Staley. The way he leads, communicates, schemes, and carries himself. That means a lot to them." He finishes by saying, "No one's happy about the Jags' loss. I believe ownership is confident that Staley, who finished 9-8, 10-7 in his first two seasons, will continue to grow in the job. He was hired only 5 years after working as a Division III defensive coordinator and only 1 year as an NFL DC. Make of it what you will. That's how I see things shaking out." So again, that was a very long thread on Twitter by Jim Trotter, who sort of laid out the situation there in LA with the Chargers. And to just simplify it, number one, they don't like giving up draft picks. Number two, they don't like paying coaches. Number three, they don't want to give coaches autonomy. You'd have to give up draft picks to get Payton. You'd have to pay him a lot of money, and you'd have to give him a lot of autonomy. So for all those reasons, it sort of makes sense. And I mentioned, so that was Jim Trotter, and then Adam Schefter went on ESPN yesterday and essentially said the same thing. So you're getting it from someone who's covered that team specifically for a long time, and the same thing from the guy who's arguably the best nationally to do it in Adam Schefter. I think it's a thought on the Chargers if they don't pursue Sean Payton. That obviously would be surprising, because if you are the Chargers, for all the reasons we've talked about, you've got an elite young quarterback, your franchise quarterback, and then you've got a defensive-minded coach who oddly was a quarterback, but he's a defensive-minded head coach, and you don't have really an offensive system to cultivate Justin Herbert into what his max potential could be. Sean Payton would undeniably be that. Also, if Sean Payton ends up in Denver, then you're the Chargers, and you've got to face Sean Payton instead of having him on your sideline. How detrimental could that be? So, you look at what is out there, and, to the point about the Chargers valuing their draft picks, if you look at the Chargers all time in the first round, do this exercise. Muse, grab the mic and do this exercise with me if you would. I want you to tell me if you think with these first-round picks, the Chargers hit or missed. This year they drafted Zion Johnson out of Boston College, the offensive lineman. I'd probably too early to tell, I would guess.
Yeah, I would say so.
Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern, the first rounder. He doesn't look like a guy that would warrant the 13th overall pick.
No, I was going to say miss.
Justin Herbert.
Yeah, it's a hit.
That's obvious.
That's a hit.
Jerry Tillery. Tillery didn't even get to a second contract.
No, that's a miss.
Like they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. Derwin James, of course, is a hit. Yeah,
naturally.
Mike Williams,
hit,
and Joey Bosa. So they had a good run there. Melvin Gordon, they shipped him out of town.
Yeah. I feel like he had a good year or so, but nothing sustainable. So miss.
Jason Verrett, the first rounder out of TCU. I remember, and the Saints were high on Jason Verrett as well. DJ Fluker,
miss.
Melvin Ingram,
that worked.
Sure. Corey Leggett,
nope.
All the way back in 2010, Ryan Matthews. Ryan Matthews had a couple of good years with him coming out of Fresno. Larry English, I don't even know who that is.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was like, that's a real person?
He was the 16th pick, a linebacker out of Northern Illinois.
Yeah, no, that's a miss.
My goodness, did this guy even...
Larry English? That's a real football player?
Larry English, 12 career sacks.
Okay. Hey, there you go.
Oh, man.
It's a season for some people.
Antoine Cason.
Nope.
Buster Davis. Hate to say it, but no. I mean, now you're going back 2007. My point is, they had a good run. Bosa, Derwin James, Herbert. They had a good run, but aside from that, it's been pretty bad. Mm-hmm. And if you had an opportunity to give up what would be, I believe, the 22nd pick in this year's draft for Sean Payton, how is that confusing? People get really romantic about draft picks, man. That's the thing that I think sometimes you sort of cripple yourself. I mean, you could certainly look at draft picks and look at your hits, but the flip side of it is so often we ignore the misses, and you just assume that every pick is going to be a hit when that's not necessarily the case. So, look, if the Chargers don't want Sean Payton, okay. I mean, I'm somewhat indifferent on where he goes now. I just want him to go somewhere so the Saints can get the capital, the draft capital. And I know I just said people are romantic about picks, but I'm looking at the New Orleans Saints without assets, right? The Saints don't have tradable assets. They've given up draft capital. You don't just magically get better. You got to find a way to get new assets. Well, this is a way to do it. The only valuable asset you have is Sean Payton, so trade him off. And if it's not to the Chargers, okay. I mean, it's going to be to somebody. And I would presume now it's going to be Denver, Houston, Arizona, who have inquired. And the other here is Carolina. And the Carolina Panthers have jumped into the mix. Now, I don't love the idea of Sean Payton coaching in the division. For a lot of reasons, it makes sense for Carolina. He knows the division, clearly, and he knows the Saints, and he's been in the division for a long time, so he's scouted a lot of the players and knows the venues and all those different things. So, 6 games a year are against teams that he would know intimately. And as a Saints fan, I would hate that, but I don't know that there's a great option for Sean Payton to go anywhere that's better. That's other than coaching New Orleans, which isn't going to happen. So, in some respect, you have to sever yourself emotionally and say, I don't really care where he goes. I just want him to go to the place that's going to give us the best return. Us meaning, if you're the Saints, thinking along those lines. And right now, you look at the picks that could be acquired in this draft. Houston has the number 2 pick. Arizona has the number 3 pick. Carolina has the 9th pick. Houston has the 12th pick. The Chargers have what we assume will be the 22nd pick. And Denver has what Tankathon is projecting as the 29th pick. So we will, that's of course a pick from San Francisco via Miami with the Bradley Chubb trade. So I don't know if realistically you're going to get one of those first 3 picks, 2, 3, or 9. I don't think you're going to get a top 10 pick. Sean Payton was a guest on The Herd with Colin Cowherd and essentially said the compensation would be a mid to late first rounder. So you would be looking somewhere, Houston's 12th pick. If you eliminate the Chargers, their 22nd pick, then maybe it's Denver's 29th pick. I mean, that's probably more what you're looking at than maybe future picks as well. So the Chargers have informally said that Staley is staying, but all the sort of anecdotal evidence here seems to point to Staley returning. And if that's the case, that's one fewer potential destination for Sean Payton. We will find out in short order. Tuesday, the 17th, Sean Payton has his first interview. That one with Houston, and then we'll start to find out with Denver, and then we'll start to find out what may transpire after that.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.